Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Wehry Weekly History and Entertainment News. Entertainment events are popping up all over the place this fall, so this week's episode will be focusing on art, train rides, and even a virtual ghost tour. However, this week's episode is also going to introduce a new segment called Remember When? In it, I'll be talking about a famous Berkshire County event and focusing on the history of it, sure to bring back memories. First, it's time for this week's trivia question, which will be answered at the end of the movie segment, since there are no major releases this week. This week's question is, in honor of it being October, what is the highest grossing movie released on Halloween weekend ever recorded, according to BoxOfficeMojo.com. Now, for this week's local entertainment headlines. There will be 2 art talks over the next few weeks at the Clark Art Museum in Williamstown. Both of them will be virtual discussions with famed art experts and historians. The first, which will take place on Tuesday, October 6th, will be A Set of Ways of Engaging. Lisa Lee on Thomas Hirschhorn and Materiality. During this talk, Lee, a Florence Gould Foundation Fellow, will be discussing the Swiss artist's most famous work. Hirschhorn was best known for his collage work and monument making, and Lee will be discussing Hirschhorn's work involved with political, economic, and social conditions. In addition, Lee will be mentioning her latest book on Isa Gazutkin, a German artist who is known for her use of common materials in sculptures. The second artist talk, which will take place on October 13th, will be An Enactment on the Impersonal. Bridget Doherty on Rethinking Subjectivity in Art. Doherty, an associate professor in the Art and German departments at Princeton University, will be discussing modernism art theory, focusing namely on subjectivity, critical theory, and psychoanalysis. She will be joined by Emmeline Butterfield Rosen, the associate director of the Williams Graduate Program in the History of Art. Both artist talks will be taking place from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. online and will be hosted by Star Foundation Director Caroline Fowler. They will be streamed live at clarkart.edu or the Clark Arts iTunes and Spotify pages. Visit the Clark Arts website for more information. The Hoosick Valley Train Ride program is open for weekend rides and will be running for extended periods of Columbus Day weekend and Black Friday. This is a great way to view Adams and North Adams from the historic trains. The train rides will be taking multiple precautions to ensure rider safety during this unprecedented time of COVID-19. Masks and/or face coverings are mandatory during the entirety of the ride, and riders must follow a specific foot traffic pattern. Guests are prohibited from eating food or drinking beverages within the coaches. The only permitted exception to this is water in outdoor areas when adequate social distancing is possible. Seating will be assigned by a crew member, utilizing social distancing requirements and party sizes, and train rides will only be an hour long. To purchase tickets for the Hoosick Valley train rides, visit berkshiretrains.org/tickets. Upon visiting the website, click on Hoosick Valley train ride tickets, then buy tickets here. From there, you will be given a calendar with the weekend dates listed in green. Click on the date you wish to reserve tickets. For the coach seats, Tickets cost $15 for adults, $14 for seniors and or members of the military, $12 for children ages 4 through 16, and are free for toddlers. The Hoosick Valley train ride starts in Adams at 13 Hoosick Street. Are you interested in the supernatural and ghosts? The Edith Wharton House in Lenox, also known as the Mount, is hosting a virtual ghost tour every Friday night in October from 8 to 9 p.m. The Edith Wharton House is rumored to be extremely haunted, both by previous servants of the mansion and by some of the Wharton family itself. Viewers will be led by veteran tour guide and expert on the Edith Wharton House, Robert Oakes. He will be taking visitors to places that are normally off limits. This is not an event for all ages and is not meant for those of the faint of heart. The Edith Wharton House's website has stated that this is not recommended for children below the age of 10 or those who are uncomfortable with the supernatural. Tickets for the event cost $10 for non-members of the Edith Wharton House, but are free for members. To reserve tickets, visit the website shown here. The Ramblewild Adventure Park is currently open for the 2020 fall season. According to its website, it was important for people to, quote, experience the outdoors with loved ones and friends, feeling a sense of connection to each other. At the Ramblewild Adventure Park, there is ziplining, rock climbing, hiking, and snowshoeing. There are many different rules and regulations for Ramblewild. Group sizes must be limited to 10 people, and when social distancing is not possible, groups must be further limited to single households. Ramblewild is currently operating at 30% capacity, and no walk-in visits are allowed. You must reserve ahead of time. Additionally, there are no spectators allowed at the climbing facilities. Only participants and their spotters are allowed at these areas. To book your trip, you must call 413-300-9348. Tickets cost $100 per person. There is a 10% discount for a group of 6 people and a 20% discount for a group of 8. Full payment is due at Ramblewild in order to confirm your reservation, cashless if possible. If you cancel your reservation within 48 hours of your trip, you can get a full refund. The movie theater industry in the Berkshires has hit a rough spot. There are no new releases this week at the Regal Cinemas in Lanesboro, and the Beacon Cinemas in Pittsfield are still closed. Additionally, Movieplex 8 in North Adams and Images Cinema in Williamstown are both open, but like Regal Cinemas, movies are extremely limited. Movies playing include Unhinged, Tenet, The New Mutants, and Infidel, all of which have been previously discussed on WWHEN. The question moviegoers are facing is it worth getting sick to see a movie? For an experiment, I recently posted on my Facebook page if anyone had visited theaters that I mentioned, and what was their experience like. Unfortunately, I got no direct responses. This is telling of how people in the Berkshires might be hesitant to attend the theaters. On an upcoming episode of WWHEN, I'll be discussing my own experience with going to a theater and what moviegoers can expect firsthand. It's now time for the answer to this week's trivia question. As a reminder, this week's question was, what is the highest grossing movie released on Halloween weekend, according to BoxOfficeMojo.com? The answer, which may surprise you, is the documentary This Is It. Even though Halloween movies dominate this list, the reason This Is It holds the #1 spot is because of the year it was released. This Is It is a documentary on Michael Jackson's incomplete final tour, and it was released in theaters in 2009, months after his untimely passing. Jackson's fans gobbled it up, and the movie earned approximately $30,783,000 its first weekend. Documentaries are the lowest grossing genre, so over $30 million in one weekend is amazing. It's now time for our newest segment, Remember When?, which will discuss famous events that occurred in Berkshire County. This week we'll be discussing the famed Sheeptacular exhibit in Pittsfield from 2003 and 2004. Before diving any deeper into the history of Sheeptacular, I'd like to give a shout out to my family watching this in Baileyville, Maine. They were visiting Pittsfield in 2004, the year that Sheeptacular was at its peak in popularity. Pittsfield and sheep have been going hand in hand since the 19th century. In 1800, Arthur Schofield arrived in Pittsfield and introduced the first carding machine for wool. A carding machine helps disentangle and clean wool from a sheep. It prepares the wool for spinning. This wool came from merino sheep, one of the most historically relevant and economically influential breeds of sheep. In 1807, businessman Elkanah Watson exhibited 2 of the merino sheep at Park Square. This marked the first time that merino sheep had been shown in New England. They were a major success, and by 1810, Pittsfield farmers exhibited 383 sheep, among other animals, at the first ever Berkshire Agricultural Fair. Berkshire's fair was historic because it was the first fair in America that was aimed at the improvement of farms rather than the sale of farm products. The success of this fair directly created the Berkshire Agricultural Society, which is still around today some 200 years later. Sheep and wool became a major industry by the early 19th century, especially in the Berkshires. The first cloth mill of any size in Berkshire County was responsible for the manufacturing of 12,000 pounds of wool annually. As an example of how big wool production was, the peak year of sheep raised in Berkshire County was 1837. That year, approximately 481,500 pounds of wool were produced from almost 137,000 sheep. This number represented 53% of wool created in the United States. By the middle of the 19th century, however, wool as an industry began to decline. For instance, in 1865, there were 10 woolen mills in Pittsfield that produced wool, but by 1875 there were only 8. The lowest point of wool production was 1895. That year, wool only produced 25% of the city's total value of goods and merchandise. The reason wool was on the decline was the rise of paper goods, which required the same style mills that the wool companies needed. Pittsfield's last woolen mill closed in 1963, and for many years, the story of sheep in Pittsfield was known, but not how much it influenced the city as a whole. However, in 2003, that all began to change. The Artscape Committee, a volunteer-led committee that sponsors, plans, and oversees juried exhibitions of art in the city, originally approached Hancock Shaker Village. They noted 2 major cities and their animal art displays: Chicago, Illinois' Cow Parade and Cincinnati, Ohio's Big Pig Gig. These cities took a famous animal in their city and were able to display beautiful pieces of art. So why couldn't Pittsfield? Artscape and Hancock agreed and were able to gain many different sponsors for the potential artists. Sheeptacular Pittsfield was led by Mary Rents, the chairwoman of the project. It has been said that Mary Rents did the work of 5 people to create this celebration that would draw tourists, educate children and the city of Pittsfield about its history, and renew community pride. With the help of Chicago, who enlisted sheep designers similar to their cow designers, they modeled Mary Merino, the prototype sheep that would be the basis for Sheeptacular. On November 10, 2003, Sheeptacular Pittsfield was officially announced at Park Square, and a call for artists was announced. Over 200 artists responded and spent the next 2 months sketching out their hopeful designs. Eventually, 70 sheep were chosen. Sponsors chose their sheep after a blind jurying process. The sponsors knew what the sheep looked like, but they did not know which artist painted them. On March 8, 2004, the artists and sponsors met for the first time at an adoption party. There, artists took home blank sheep to transform them into their designs. While this was going on, the Pittsfield public was invited to create paper drawings of sheep at the Pittsfield Visitor Center. Crayons and forms were provided, and over 200 people came and created their own artist designs, with the sheep on paper provided. All sheep were exhibited throughout the spring, but there were 3 winners who received an undisclosed monetary prize, each in different age categories. The winner in the age 6 to 12 category was a Winter's Fire sheep. In the 13 to 18 category, Jelly Bean. And in the 19 and over category, Daisy. And all sheep on the left side of the slide are the winning sheep. Additionally, Sheeptacular took over Pittsfield schools as well. During the entire month of March, 39 2-foot-long versions of the full-size works were exhibited at the Berkshire Artisans Gallery, which were created by over 2,500 students from every school in the city, both public and private. The elementary schools created 3 sheep each, middle and high schools created 3 sheep, Berkshire Community College 2, and the private schools worked on 1 each. Here are some of the sheep that they created from Crosby Elementary School, Herberg Middle School, and Taconic High School, respectively. During March and April 2004, artists and their sponsors began painting sheep to be displayed to the public. They ranged in colors and themes, but most of them dealt with famous events that happened in the city of Pittsfield. As an example, By Hook or By Crook, which was located on North Street, was based on creating rugs at the Hancock Shaker Village, which had a lot to do with sheep. On June 5, 2004, Sheeptacular Pittsfield officially opened up to the public in downtown Pittsfield. There were special events, exhibits, and artist talks throughout the summer, highlighting the sheep. I'm now going to be taking you on a short tour where some of the sheep were located. Our first stop is Park Square, which featured several different types of sheep. The first sheep is the indispensable ewe, which was a fortune-telling sheep that you could actually spin an arrow to see your fortune. Also at Park Square were sheep such as Yearling and Pittsfield's Past, which contains pictures from the history of Pittsfield. Our next stop will be across the street from Park Square on South Street. The first of these sheep is A Few Pennies Saved, which was made entirely out of pennies followed by topo sheep, which contained a map of the city of Pittsfield. Another sheep located on South Street was Ba Ba Burke sheep, have you any wool, which contained famous landmarks of Berkshire County. Now we will proceed down on North Street with Rocket sheep, which is shaped to look just like an actual rocket ship, and See You in the Berkshires, showing the 4 seasons, 2 seasons on each side of the sheep. Also on North Street was Berkshire by Yuki, with a very picturesque view of Mount Greylock, a series of 3 sheep. On this slide, from farthest to closest, here's looking at Euclid, Tiffany Lamb, and Merino Antoinette, and finally, Up Street Shopper Sheep, which was in front of Old England Brothers department store. On September 18, 2004, 62 of the 70 merino sheep, including most of the sheep mentioned before, were put up for auction at the Hancock Shaker Village. More than 950 people attended the event, in spite of terrible weather. Absentee bids from Texas, California, Missouri, and other states were mailed and faxed in to the Sheeptacular Committee prior to the auction. Prices paid ranged from $2,500 to $11,000. The highest sheep up for auction was See You in the Berkshires. Additionally, the 38 mini merino sheep created by schools in Pittsfield were sold at a separate auction and brought in more than $7,000. While most of the sheep today are now in undisclosed locations, I was able to find the Vincent sheep, which is located outside the Guardian Life Insurance building, just as it was in 2004. I'd like to give a special thank you to the following organizations for helping me create the Sheeptacular portion of Remember When? The PCTV and iBerkshire's archives and websites were immensely helpful in finding archival videos and photos. Also, Abby T. Powers from Artscape gave me numerous information about how Sheeptacular came to be. She also lent me a book called Sheeptacular Pittsfield, Sheer Art Spun from Our Merino Heritage. This book can be bought online if you're interested more about the history, and all proceeds go towards Artscape. That ends this week's episode of Wehry Weekly History and Entertainment News. You can watch this week's episode on channel 1301 of PCTV, CTSB TV, and NBC TC. Airtimes on all 3 of these networks vary. Visit the websites shown here for more information. Thank you.